Good morning. We have general questions. Question number 1, George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it has had with management at the BASF manufacturing plant in Paisley.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the announcement of the proposed closure of BASF's facility in Paisley with the possible loss of 141 jobs is a great blow to the workforce, and my thoughts are with the workers and their families at this time. Scottish Enterprise has been in close regular contact with BASF over the last 4 years and has worked with the company on its restructuring programme and sustainable site project. This has included financial support such as regional selective assistance, R&D grant and an organisational development grant. It has also provided various forms of specialist support such as training and advice. Meetings took place between Scottish Enterprise and BASF in June and August this year to discuss ongoing support for the site. Following the announcement last week, Scottish Enterprise met the Paisley site director on Thursday, the 24th of October. In addition, the First Minister spoke with Michael Hines, member of the Board of Executive Directors of BASF last week, and informed him that Scottish Enterprise would work with local management in Paisley in response to this announcement. He is also committed that PACE assistance would be offered to any affected employees.
George Adam.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. I'm sure he agrees with me that these job losses are significant and the families that will be affected need as much support as possible. Would he also be keen on visiting the plant with me in the near future to hear from the individuals concerned?
Mr Swinney.
I accept the point that Mr Adam has made. It is a very serious situation when any employment loss takes place, and the Government does all that it can to support in any way possible. And the points that I made in my original answer about the availability of Scottish Enterprise and PACE support to assist in the matter reflect the Government's position. I would be delighted to join Mr Adam on a visit to the plant to meet with the employees and to ensure that all steps that can be taken to support individuals are taken in this difficult situation.
Neil Bibby.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that I have written to him on this matter. Following on from George Adam, can I welcome the contact the Scottish Government has made with BASF and Renfrewshire Council as well, and welcome his commitment to visit the plant. I believe there is still a demand for the products made in Paisley, and I would urge the Scottish Government to do all it can to find an alternative buyer or use for the site. Can I also ask, given that the plant has employed generations of the same family in Paisley for over 60 years, that the Scottish Government ask BASF to consider what legacy, financial or otherwise, they will leave the community should the closure go ahead?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think there are a range of steps that the Government will take to try to address the situation. I'm sure Mr Bibby appreciates that the Government does endeavour to avoid industrial closure where we possibly can do, and in a number of examples we have worked extremely hard, sometimes successfully, unfortunately sometimes unsuccessfully, to avoid closure announcements that are made by companies. But companies have to assess market conditions, and they can only remain in operation if they have successful and profitable businesses. I certainly will discuss the issues that Mr Bibby has raised today with the company as part of the visit that I make with Mr Adam. I'm delighted to do all that I can to try to help out in this situation, and as we have seen from the recent events in Grangemouth, it is possible at times for government to deliver positive solutions where industrial threats are levelled, but in not all cases will we be able to do so, but we will endeavour to achieve that in this circumstance.
Graham Day.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what emphasis it places on the delivery of hospital services in rural areas.
Minister Michael Matheson.
The Scottish Government is committed to ensuring that all communities in Scotland receive high-quality and sustainable healthcare services. NHS boards have a statutory obligation to provide and are accountable for those services which they consider necessary to meet all reasonable requirements for their areas. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to service provision, and health boards are expected to design and put in place those service models that best reflect local community circumstances. All NHS board service provision, whether in rural or urban areas, should match the aims and ambitions of the Healthcare Quality Strategy and make measurable progress towards the 2020 vision.
Graham Day.
I thank the Minister for that answer, but I wonder if he's aware of plans by NHS Tayside to close Little Kearney Hospital in Arbroath in my constituency and move the palliative care it provides to Arbroath Infirmary. And I wonder if he would agree with me that if such a move were to go ahead, it should only do so if that led to better facilities, matching the best available elsewhere in Angus, being provided both for patients and their families.
Minister.
I'm aware that NHS Tayside are considering services in this area. However, they have confirmed that no decision has been taken regarding the future of Little Kearney Hospital in itself. However, the board have identified an opportunity to make further service improvements for South Angus in the field of palliative and cancer care. They've had early discussions with Macmillan regarding a proposal to introduce 3 palliative care inpatient suites in Arbroath, with a day assessment and treatment facility adjacent. In doing so, this would significantly improve the range of assessment and diagnostic and treatment options available in South Angus. Alongside that, they are looking at how they can develop treatment services in conjunction with Ninewells Oncology service, again, which would help to enhance services at a local level. However, NHS Tayside are very clear that any changes to services have to be done in conjunction with the local community and with good local engagement with the local community, and I would expect them to do so in the considering they've got about Little Kearney and its future.
Question number 3, Sarah Boyack. Can we have Ms Boyack's microphone on, please?
It's on this one. Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it plans to introduce a scheme for local authorities similar to the City Deal programme in England.
Secretary Nicola Sturgeon.
Local authorities in Scotland already benefit from many of the flexibilities of city deals which the UK Government is considering for city regions in England. However, the Scottish Government is always willing to listen to practical suggestions for assisting cities' efforts to promote economic growth, and in this regard I very much look forward to continuing dialogue within the Scottish Cities Alliance.
Sarah Boyack.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response? Just to give 2 examples, the City Deal for Leeds is expected to generate around 60,000 new jobs, and for Manchester it's expected to generate over £1 billion, £1.2 billion in new investment through the Earnback and TIF schemes. So what powers does the Scottish Government consider that they could transfer to local government, and what work is being done to talk to the UK Government about what new initiatives we could give our local authorities so that they could generate new investment in terms of jobs and infrastructure that would generate new support for our local economies in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as I said in my initial answer, we remain very open-minded to discussing with cities how we can further empower them to grow their economies and serve the people that they represent. This is something that is under active discussion and consideration within the Scottish Cities Alliance. Edinburgh City Council is an active participant in that alliance. Glasgow is also, as the member will be aware, discussing city deals in some respect. We had a discussion on this at the last Cities Alliance meeting, and I have every expectation we'll do so at the next one as well. It might just be worth pointing out, though, to Sarah Boyack. She mentioned specifically, I think, Greater Manchester. Under arrangements such as the deal that has been struck with Greater Manchester, the organisation that stands to benefit the most is actually Her Majesty's Treasury. So we need to make sure that in taking forward any plans or proposals, we don't disadvantage ourselves in any way. Of course, the position would be different in the context of an independent Scotland, where we would have full control over tax revenues and greater opportunities to use these for the benefit of people in Scotland. So I would ask the member to bear that particular point in mind. But I would end by simply saying again that we are not just open-minded, but are considering and discussing these things in detail with the cities, and I'd be more than happy to keep the member updated as these discussions progress.
Question number 4, Willie Coffey.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government when it last met East Ayrshire Council and what matters were discussed.
Minister Derek Mackay.
The Scottish Government meets regularly with Scotland's councils to discuss a wide range of issues, this including a meeting with East Ayrshire councillors and officials on the 16th of October to discuss the Town Centre Review and the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund.
Willie Coffey.
Thank the Minister for that answer. He will be aware, of course, of the significant investments made in Kilmarnock in recent years in our public buildings and environment. Despite that investment, much more needs to be done to help Kilmarnock to make progress after the loss of the 700 jobs at Johnny Walker's. Would the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss how best the Scottish Government can assist East Ayrshire in further developing its economic strategy.
Minister.
Very happy to accept that invitation to meet with Mr Coffey to discuss these matters, and also indicate that next week I'll be going to East Ayrshire to work in partnership with others, including the Council, on matters of regeneration and town centres. So I look forward to that. I'll make sure an invitation is extended to the constituency member and others, and then carry forward discussions to achieve the objectives that the member suggested.
Question number 5, Claire Baker.
To ask the Scottish Government when it will respond to the Audit Scotland report, NHS Financial Performance 2012 to 2013.
Minister Michael Matheson.
The Public Audit Committee is due to consider the Audit Scotland report, NHS Financial Performance 2012-13, at their meeting on the 6th of November 2013. At the meeting, the Auditor-General for Scotland will give evidence on the report, and then the committee will consider what action, if any, is required. Following deliberations of the committee, the Scottish Government will respond formally to the report.
Claire Baker.
NHS Fife is not only one of the NHS boards that received brokerage to break even last year, it is also one of the 5 health boards that are underfunded according to their NRAC target allocation. So while NHS Fife received brokerage of £1.4 million this year and £1.1 million last year, and Audit Scotland are raising concerns that they will prioritise paying back that loan rather than investing in services, it also continues to be underfunded by £12 million that would be expected under the NRAC formula. Can I ask the Minister what steps are being taken to deliver funding parity for NHS Fife, and when he expects that can be achieved?
Minister.
Well, I'm sure the member will welcome the fact that our NHS boards in Scotland for the 5th year in a row have all reached a break-even position where they've been able to manage their budgets effectively, including that of NHS Fife. NRAC formula has been placed for several years now, and we are moving towards a level of parity across all of the boards, but it has to be done in a way which does not financially disadvantage some of the other boards at this present point, and that process will continue over the next couple of years in order to make sure that we have parity across all of the NHS territorial boards.
Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In terms of the key issue of the actual level of resource funding being made available, can the Minister confirm what that figure is for NHS Fife, and presumably there would be increased repayment flexibility arrangements possible in terms of the brokerage, as there has been for NHS Tayside?
Minister.
Well, we work with all boards to help to make sure that they are able to actually reach break-even positions with their budgets. But as the member will be aware, that we have kept to our manifesto commitment in passing on all of the Barnett consequentials for the health budget to our territorial boards where that has been possible. It's also worth noting that in the draft budget for 2014-15, NHS territorial boards will receive an allocated increase of 3.1% in 2014-15 and 2.7% in 2015-16, which represents a real terms increase which will be allocated directly towards protecting frontline services.
Question number 6, Ian Gray.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the costs and processes involved in renationalising the Royal Mail in an independent Scotland, and with whom it has consulted.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is in contact with a range of relevant stakeholders about the future of the postal service. The cost of securing a publicly owned mail service in Scotland will be based on the value of the assets at the time.
Ian Gray.
Well, the day after the First Minister made his surprise commitment, by which I mean it was a surprise to the Cabinet Secretary, I did hear Mr Swinney explain on the radio that this is how he would achieve this promise, by using the proceeds, Scotland's share of the proceeds of the Royal Mail sale, to buy back Royal Mail assets in Scotland. The problem with that, of course, is that because Royal Mail was so foolishly sold off at a bargain basement price, those assets today are worth at least 70% more than when he made that promise. How does he plan now to pay for that promise?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think that's a very interesting take on this question from Mr Gray. I thought Mr Gray had tabled this question because he was going to set out the willingness of the Labour Party to work with us to bring this asset back into public hands. And instead of bemoaning, Mr Gray bemoans the sell-off of the Royal Mail at an undervalued price. It was sold off, the shares were sold off priced between 260 pence and 330 pence. They're now trading at 530 pence. I didn't take that decision. The useless United Kingdom government took that decision. And this lot over here want to allow the United Kingdom government to carry on taking useless and stupid decisions about the future of our country. So, really, if Mr Gray wants to come here and offer any helpful intervention in the process, he should do what the Member of Parliament for North Ayrshire did, who is a Labour MP, I might add, and support the renationalisation of the Royal Mail.
Question number 7, John Finney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what steps it's taking to improve safety for cyclists.
Minister Keith Brown.
We are improving road safety for cyclists through a wide range of measures around the 3 E's, that's engineering, education and enforcement. We are increasing investment in cycling infrastructure with an additional funding of £20 million over the next 2 years announced in the draft budget, on top of the £58 million already allocated since the 2011 spending review. We have developed road user awareness campaigns to foster mutual respect on the roads. The Scottish Government's Road Safety Framework to 2020 includes commitments on education and training, improved signage, consideration of cycling in the context of roads maintenance and design, and the use of 20-mile-an-hour zones in all residential areas. A broad portfolio of approaches is needed and will continue to be developed to improve cyclist safety.
John Finney.
I thank the Minister for that detailed response. Minister, Police Scotland have record numbers of officers at the moment, and in the past police officers were engaged in primary schools with cycling proficiency. Things have moved on, but there's an opportunity there surely for police to engage with young people in road safety. Will you get in touch with Police Scotland and with the Cabinet Secretary for Justice to encourage that approach, which could only enhance community safety?
Minister.
I would say, of course, that the police have a major role to play in the enforcement measures which I mentioned in my first response, but it's also the case that substantial initiatives are underway just now to ensure that all children get the chance to have on-the-road safety training, whereas previously it was very often in the playground, whereas now it's on-the-road safety training that they get. And I think that's the right way to proceed. I think it's also worth mentioning in the case of safety generally, we have just seen a decrease in fatalities from 170 down to 174 people from the previous 185. We've seen a decrease in total casualties, a decrease in child casualties, a decrease in child fatalities, a decrease in pedestrian casualties, and a decrease in motorcyclist fatalities. And of course, the standout from that is the increase that we've seen in relation to cyclist casualties. So we do have to give this further attention. There's no question of that, but I think the best way to deal with that is to make sure that every child has a chance to have on-the-road training, which will reassure both them and their parents that it's safe to cycle.
Question number 8, Nanette Milne.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to develop telecare services for people across Scotland.
Minister Michael Matheson.
Telecare can and does support more people to live independently at home and within their community, a message we are keen to promote during the first Scottish Telehealth and Telecare Week, which we are currently in the middle of. I recognise, however, that more can be done to develop telecare in Scotland, and to help drive this forward, the Scottish Government, along with NHS Scotland and COSLA, published a national telehealth and telecare delivery plan for Scotland to 2015, which sets out our ambitions for the growth of telecare services across Scotland. This includes work with Scotland Excel on a procurement framework for telecare, involving all 32 local authorities and a number of housing associations. This has ensured that the latest technology is available at the lowest possible price across the country.
Nanette Milne.
I thank the Minister for his response. The Accounts Commission have today reported that Scotland's local authorities are increasing charges for services such as elderly home care, Meals on Wheels and emergency alarms to plug a shortfall in their finances, partly caused by the council tax freeze. The National Telehealth and Telecare Delivery Plan for Scotland to 2015 includes a recommendation that the Scottish Government engage more effectively with councils and the housing and care home community to expand the use of telecare for elderly and vulnerable tenants and residents. What implications does the Minister believe that increased charges for elderly residents will have for the use of telecare for the elderly in Scotland?
Minister.
Well, the strategy which I made reference to in my earlier answer to the member is exactly the way in which we intend to take this forward with our partners within local government and within the health service in Scotland. What's extremely important is that telehealth care should not be looked upon as being an alternative to care, but it's there to help to support other forms of care, including services such as Meals on Wheels, home care, etc. And the approach that we are taking in Scotland is to take this forward on an incremental basis, where we can make sure that we get real benefits both for the individuals who use the service and also for the service providers. And the strategy which we've set out is set out in a way which helps us to make sure we achieve that across the country with all the partners who can assist us in delivering in it.
Thank you. That ends general question time. Before we come to the next item of business, I am sure members